I think those of us who are working in the profession, know that there are huge changes within the profession itself. Why do we feel so uncomfortable with change? Throw me some words.
Unknown.
The unknown. What else?
Readapting.
Readapting, yep. Yes. Lack of confidence. Absolutely. I think actually it's probably because we're out of control. Don't you think? We don't like it when we're out of control. So what I would suggest that you do, moving forwards, we have two different strands here, really. The first is that you guys, 10 years ago, when Lehman's went bang, stepped up to have to take on a whole heap of the roles that were traditionally middle management. So we're now in a situation where we have 89% of you doing events, there are 52% of you getting involved in HR, a whole heap of you working in finance, mainly because the middle managers went during the recession. And there's nothing more permanent than temporary. So here we are 10 years in and you're all still getting involved in that side of the work. The other thing that is a huge influence is this fourth industrial revolution that we're right in the middle of. And basically that means that all the task-based stuff that you're so used to doing is going to go out the window. Because if you can do something twice, it will be automated. And the World Economic Forum is saying that the role of the assistant is not likely to be around in 2022. I would like to see them try that. And having said that, there is a grain of truth in it, because I think that, if you are wanting to remain relevant within your businesses, you need to be upskilling, you need to be raising your game, and the businesses that have upskilled their assistants are finding huge increases in productivity. And in fact, we are about to publish a case study of the restructure that we did with Grant Thornton, so that they upskilled their top level of assistants, and it's increased in a 28% increase in productivity. So, on that note, we have got our panel here this morning. As I said, the theme is change is inevitable, and every single one of these partnerships have been through enormous change in the last couple of years, quite a lot of it technological. And we're going to start off by introducing all of our panel. So we have from Higgs & Son, Philip Barnsley, who is partner, and Angela Crode, who is EA. This is over here in the middle. And then we have Pat and Alan. And Pat and Alan are from Avison Young, and Alan is the principal and Pat is the National Administrative Manager. Then, where did that walk come from? Oh, look, over there, excellent. And then we have James Croft, who is Group Strategy and Retail Director, and Claire Milton, who is his EA. And finally, we have Christian Toon and we have Karen Allen, who are both from Pinsent Mason. And Pinsent Mason has just been nominated in the Yorkshire PA of the Year Awards as being the best employer. So I'm very interested to hear what you guys have to say. But shall we start with Philip and Angela then? Because I know that you're currently in the process of launching a new practice management system. You also have an upgraded version of your current dictation tool, Big Hand, going on, and you have a restructure of your building. You are looking remarkably sane, considering the amount of change that's going on. But I'm interested, I know you put in a new document management system in 2017. What lessons did you learn from that, and how have you used that moving forwards?
Yeah, so it is an extremely busy time at Higgs & Sons at the moment, all in the background, all good work going on. But yeah, we introduced a document management system called NetDocs, which was a huge cultural change for the firm, across the firm. And also, like you alluded to earlier, change can be very scary, it can be very overwhelming, and everyone deals with change in a different way. So in order to make that transition as smoothly as possible, Phil and I got together quite early on to say, right, okay, what does this mean for us as a team? How are we going to manage and sort of attack this, if you like? So from branding around a few ideas, Phil gave me the support and guidance to just go off and really sort of put together a foolproof guide, if you like, so that an alien could land on the planet and could literally pick it up and go, okay, this is what we do on family. So that's what we did. Now, in order to do that, I couldn't just go away and just top down what I thought were the right and proper things to do. It meant bringing in the solicitors from their points of view and communicating with them to see what their feedback was. And similarly, the same with the support team. And then it was bringing all of those ideas together, flushing out, because this took about 3 or 4 months to go from start to finish. And of course, I was checking it in at all times with Phil to make sure that he was happy with the progress that was being made. The actual document was fit for purpose. And then when we initially rolled it out, which was called the Family Bible, it was suddenly born out of all our hard work. But the main thing was, it was a real team effort. Everyone was involved, everyone was kept up to date every step of the way. So I think the main sort of things that came out of that and what we learned was that it's very important to communicate. Without good communication, there really is no way forward. But on top of that, by involving everyone and taking on their views and then speaking as a group to say, right, okay, this is what we're now going to produce. Is everyone okay with that? And actually, it's never going to be a finished item. We will always address it, go back to it, change anything that's not working, listen to any feedback that we're going to get along the way. And I think by doing that, everyone then becomes involved and feels that they've had an input to the end result.
Yeah, but it's interesting. I think, communication is so important. You're right. I think where things fall down is so often when the communication isn't clear. But the other thing is that there were very obviously clearly defined roles there, because, you were doing the inspiring, I think, and probably going out and sharing the good news.
I effectively got somebody else to do it for me. That's what I've just learned. I didn't actually do anything. Might have a word with myself about that. I think that's right. I think it is communication. And from my perspective, from leading the whole team, it was about making sure everyone had a voice about what they thought would make this work really well for us as a team. And if everyone had a voice and if everyone got a say, then we could produce something that went across everyone and everyone's perspective was in it. So we started from a place of, well, this is where we are now and this is where we want to be. How can we make that as efficient as possible? Because whether it's head of department or whether it's office assistant, it doesn't matter. From our perspective, it was all about having the most efficient process so that we could make the most out of the new technology and be as ready as we could be for what was coming down the line for more change. And empowering Angela, giving her the autonomy to actually go and implement that and make sure it was delivered and make sure the team knew that she was delivering it was a really important thing for us to learn, because we don't have always, all of us, the time to do everything. So actually giving people the autonomy to do it, giving them the power to do it, I think is a great way of making sure that people feel that they're really important to the whole team effort. And then it then has worked, I think, relatively well. It's gone very smoothly.
Fantastic. So I know that you have only worked together for the last 2 years. And I was particularly interested to read that you have improved communication and worked to really change the mindset of your entire team. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? Because I think the partnership is really evident. You're very obviously leading the process side of things. And on the other side, you are leading kind of officially the project. So how does that work between the two of you?
Well, when I first joined the team, it became quickly evident to me that there was a slight divide between support and the solicitors. There was a little bit of them and us. So as well as establishing our relationship, because we'd never worked together before, Phil, through his support and guidance again, and it gave me the green light to really take a hold of the support team, because obviously in my position I get to hear both sides of the story. So I get to hear the support side and what really isn't pleasing them, and then I get to hear the solicitor side and what's really not really pleasing them. What I wasn't hearing though was the communication in order to bridge that gap. So, as I say, I spoke to Phil. We had a really good discussion. He was really, really encouraging in sort of fixing the problem. So I sort of took a hold of the support team, turn the negativities that I was coming across into, right, okay, so I can see that's a problem, how are we going to fix it? And then just putting things in place for doing things like that. So because we didn't communicate very well, what I intended to do and went on to do was open up that communication. So because they're solicitors, we get that, we understand and respect their position, but it doesn't mean we can't have our say.
Yeah.
So that's when we started having quite healthy debates, really good, meaningful conversations, and slowly but surely we did bridge that gap. And it was a case of sharing feedback, listening to each other's points of view, respecting and appreciating each other's gripes as well, because what would be high on our priority list as a support team wouldn't necessarily be a priority on their side, on the solicitor's side. So it was about sort of bridging that gap and making sure that we were all working as a team. And actually, as we went through this process, it became really apparent that we were all striving for the same thing.
Yes.
Actually, it was just that the communication had broke down and we were almost working against each other. And what we do now, because our communication is so good, it means that we can provide an absolutely excellent service, client service, as best as we possibly can. And as a team, we are the best team that we can possibly be. So that was a real good effort on both sides of the camp, if you like, that now we are a real team, that we know we're focused and we've got a streamlined processes of what we follow.
Yep. I think it's really, really interesting because when the communication is right, it's like your skill sets and your executive skill sets almost become two sides of the coin. And when the partnership is right, one of you breathes in and the other one breathes out. You know, I find with my assistant, I say, I've had an amazing idea. And he goes pale because he knows he's going to have to put the process in place, you know. But it's really wonderful to see the partnership there. I'm going to move on and we're going to talk to Avison Young and I'm just going to read because it's quite a long paragraph. The change at corporate level within our business over the last 5 years has been unprecedented. Combine this with the challenging market conditions and the structural changes within our business division, restructuring solutions, means that we have undergone a complete transformation in how we operate at a national and regional level in undertaking our day-to-day work. This evolution and change in working practices is ongoing and happening at an unprecedented speed. Technology, without a doubt, is one of the key catalysts to this change. Pat, you've been at the firm for 30 years. You must have seen an enormous amount of change in that time.
Oh, God, yes.
So tell us a little bit about how your role has changed and where you see it heading.
When I first started with the company, which then was called Grimley & Son, which was a firm that had started in the mid-1800s, everybody, all the management were treated with awe and spoken of very quietly, treated with immense respect, only ever referred to as Mr. So-and-so, because there were no women in management. And I was asked when I first started the job, did I want a golf ball typewriter or a daisy wheel typewriter? I'm guessing that to most of you, you haven't got a clue what this means. These are. Somebody knows. These were typewriters. There was no memory at all. So in the morning, I would go in, take the post into my boss. I would sit, I would take down dictation. I would go back, I would type the letter, give it to him to sign. Of course, he'd change it, so I'd have to go back and I'd have to type it all again. And that would take up the majority of the day, and basically that's what you did in those days. That was being a secretary. My word, how that's changed. Nowadays, a lot of the guys do their own typing because they learn when they're young. Everybody has a keyboard. Everybody thinks they know how to type. Everybody thinks they know how to spell. I try and put them right sometimes. And now everybody's got their own laptop. It's been amazing. Absolutely amazing. The change in my job has been incredible. And I couldn't have coped with that change without the support of the guys that I work with.
What do you find most challenging about the changes, Pat? Because, I mean, you know, as I said at the beginning, none of us particularly likes change. So if you're suddenly in a situation, especially with all the technology and so on, and I said in that intro to you, it's all changing so fast.
Yes.
That's the other thing. How do you keep up as an assistant? And I know that you're a champion for the newest piece of technology
yes.
that's been brought in, haven't you?
Oh, I love a piece of tech. I really do. I mean, that's the thing. I've learned over the years that you've got to be positive about it. You've got to find out as much as you possibly can about whatever's coming in and be a champion of it going forward and project that onto the rest of the team and get them involved. And as you said, it's exactly the same. That way you work as a cohesive whole, a team. It's brilliant. I love tech.
Well, it kind of frees us up to do more interesting things, I think, as well, doesn't it? Alan, I'm interested to know from you how this partnership works, and especially in the middle of change. Why is it so important to have a strong partnership?
Hello, good morning, everyone. It's a bit daunting. So I suppose the best thing I can relate it to, and it's fascinating, you know, I speak to Pat on a daily basis, when she takes about 30 years and talks about typewriters and what it used to be like to where we are now. For Pat to be so forward-thinking in terms of engagement within our business and supportive of us, given how long she's been at the business, frankly, if Pat can do it, everyone can sort of embrace change and look forward rather than backwards. But in terms of the question in hand and the relationship side of things, so back in 2014, we went through various ownerships at what was GVA. So we had LDC Private Equity, then we were called Billfinger GVA, then we were called EQT, Apleona, and now Ravison Young. So we had all that change at a structural level. And we just needed that commonality and that sort of level playing field on a day-to-day basis in terms of consistency, because from a restructuring point of view, we knew we had an extremely strong business unit, but there were so many changes at the top. That working relationship to sort of impose on a national level to continue business as usual was absolutely imperative, because there was all the changes at the top end sort of were communicated to the market and almost distilled what we were trying to do. So me and Pat sat down, you know, what are the key objectives at each point in the process in terms of when the name was changed, you know, things as easy as branding and letterhead and everything else. But we needed to get that consistency and make sure we were doing the right thing, not just between the two of us in the Midlands, but naturally. Because if you go off track, you start losing your value as a business. But the key things: communication, two-way communication. So you take the good, and, take the good and bad. And I think there was the appreciation that at times there was friction in the discussions. But off the back of the friction, you've got to learn. Neither of us are shrinking violets, it's fair to say. So there was some interesting discussions. But the key thing, which I picked up before, we both wanted to get. There was an appreciation. We both wanted to get to the same place. So it wasn't me and Pat. It wasn't us and them. It was us together. And because we're quite passionate, where we wanted to take the business. There was some interesting debates. But I think if you can have an appreciation in terms of there is going to be that two-way conversation. There is going to be that friction at times. But as long as you've got that same goal in place. That's the key thing to have in focus.
Yeah, and how important is it to have Pat supporting you doing that? I mean, what does she bring to the party? Because so many assistants don't have assistants. so many executives don't have assistants and have to just do that autonomously. So actually having the partnership, what do you think that brings?
So Pat's got a national role. And I said to Pat that we were talking about this at the start of the week, and I was trying to think of a phrase in terms of describing how her role works and what she does. And I called her the puppet master, but then I didn't know if I was calling her the master and us the puppet, so I wasn't sure if it was possible or not. And we spoke before everyone came back in the room in terms of the term support and PA and us and them and how it all works. But it's a very much a collective approach, isn't it? In terms of we are one team. And Pat rightly says you've got to differentiate between the surveying side of things, a bit like the legal side, solicitors and the support function. But the support function is absolutely key. It's almost the glue that holds everything together. But all down to communication.
Yep.
Common objectives, move in the right direction, look forwards, not backwards.
Yep, absolutely. Pat, I just want to touch on, before I move on to one of our other partnerships, you look after the directors as well, don't you? And I know that you've had this quite challenging time as far as market conditions are concerned. How do you support such different personalities all at the same time to get through a period of change?
I can't lie, it's been a challenge at times.
I'm
But working with different personalities, not only within the same office but nationally, it can be a problem. But my first boss used to teach me how to prioritise by count the pips, mate. Whoever's most important gets their work done first, which is good if everybody's screaming that something's urgent. If not, then you do need to communicate, again, to say to everybody, OK, you're saying this is urgent, but really, is it? How urgent? Is it later on today? Is it next week? Is it tomorrow? Just tell me. And thankfully, the team that I work with have all learnt over the years to treat me with a certain level of respect. Thank God. And they're brilliant. And we do work well together.
Yes.
And it's great. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm coming down here to James. Do you have a microphone? Oh,
I do.
Lovely. Good.
I'm prepared. I'll try to be succinct.
So, James and Claire, you guys, totally different type of business now. You have moved from leased and tenanted pubs to managed pubs, and you've got a whole heap of new subsidiaries on board. It was really exciting reading about all the changes that are happening in your business, but there were so many, especially culturally. It must have been mind-blowing for the people that were working for you. So how did you manage that?
Yeah, so we're a pretty simple business to understand. We're a large pub operator, largely in the UK, listed business. And our business and our life was really easy because we just rented out pubs. All we did was collect rents. Jobs were really straightforward. About 5 years ago, we wrote a new strategy and said, let's try and manage the pubs ourselves. How hard can that be? Well, turns out it's pretty hard, actually. And when we announced our strategy, to my worry, the commentators in the city referred to it as bold, and somebody called it very, very brave. And the last thing you want in a listed company is when your analysts and city commentators are saying you're being very brave. So we had to really work hard at managing change, and we went through the sorts of things you would expect. We, created a clear vision, direction for the business. We communicated, clearly throughout the group. We made sure that people knew what they were supposed to be doing. We broke down where there were conflicts across the business. But critically for today, the way I worked with Claire started to change quite substantially, because we had a pretty easy time, really. I've been property director. Didn't work particularly hard, was around the office a lot and having a jolly old time. Setting up these new businesses, things really changed quite rapidly for me. And Claire really had to step up to the mark, and two things stick out initially which made a big difference to me is Claire became really firm with me. Sometimes she was quite sharp in her expressions and holding me to account and making sure I was much more focused, but critically something I hadn't really appreciated. At a time of change and the impact on people, Claire is hugely in tune with the feeling on the ground. We have 300 people in our office in Solihull and another 300 people working across the country. Because the way that Claire is, people would talk to her and she was able to take the temperature of the business. And for me, leading this change and developing the strategy and opening up new businesses and starting to run pubs, having somebody working alongside you who not only kept you on a straight and narrow and didn't mind telling you when you were not focused on the right things, but equally being so in tune with the business was hugely helpful. You can do all the surveys you want and you can walk around the offices and think you're a director and people will tell you how they're really feeling. They don't. They tell you what they think you want to hear. But they trust Claire. She's been in the business a long time and they knew that she'd listened to what they were thinking, and she was very relaxed about telling me what people were actually saying as opposed to what I thought they'd be saying.
I think it's a really good point, and it's well made. You know, I think often assistants don't feel that they should have a voice and that people aren't going to want to hear what they have to say. And personally, for me as a CEO, I think we forget that quite often as executives, it's quite a lonely role. You don't have many people that you can trust like that. So to have somebody who says, why are we doing that again? Or can you explain to me what you actually mean by that? For me, it refines my thinking and really helps to give clarity as to the way I'm moving forward. And it sounds that very much for the two of you. I mean, those relationships take a while to build. You don't want to be on your first day and questioning everything. But, you know, once you've got the relationship there, to have a relationship like yours where you can trust what Claire is saying and to be a barometer must be really useful. Claire, what about from your point of view with these changes? What kind of new skills did you have to implement in order to keep up to date with how it was all going?
Yeah, so we moved sort of very quickly from a sort of a very orderly situation where James would spend probably about 50% of his time in the office. It was a very structured routine to a completely new environment where the working patterns had to become sort of more fluid, really. For example, now I probably only see James maybe once or twice a month, really.
She's quite happy with that situation. It's a little hurtful, if I'm honest.
Yeah, so it's essential that James is really well organised and that his time is used to the best of his ability and allocated to all the existing business at that time, which was the property team and of the new setting up of all the new companies. So it was really clear around when we were going through the change in the strategy that James and his team were, you know, really quite stretched. And I, as James said, I had to be quite strict with James and his team.
You weren't sure who was working for who for quite a long period of time.
Because they do. I mean, James and his team, you know, they are all lovely, and they do just have a tendency to just say yes to people, and it wasn't always the best, obviously, use of their time. So I needed to sort of remain focused on ensuring that the actions, all of James' actions, were followed up, and he was just really dealing with that main priority list. So also during this time, I was also managing the property admin team, which had 17 people in it. So myself, alongside trying to organise James and his team, I had to be really well organised at the same time. And I don't think James will mind me saying this, but he's not the most empathetic of people. And I know that he and his team sort of valued my insight at how the teams were feeling at that time, really.
Very definitely. And there is a serious point in all the joviality, which is that actually, can you raise your hand if you think your role is to make your executive the very best they can possibly be? Of course it is. That's what you're employed to do. But I think that quite often you forget that you're employed by the business to do that. You're not employed by your executive. So your role is actually, how much does your executive earn, ish? Yeah, a lot, she says. Shall we agree a lot? Is that okay?
Not enough.
and how much time do you reckon you save them on a weekly basis? A lot, yes, excellent. So basically, if you times one by the other, that is what you're contributing to the bottom line. Yes? So your role, what you're paid for by your executive, by your business, is for you to make your executive as effective as they can possibly be. So I want you to start thinking about yourselves in terms of hours and say, okay, so what do they earn per hour? And is this money that the business is spending on that hour for them the best use of that money? Yes? Break it down that way. Because actually, if you start doing that, then your executives are going to be really flying and you seriously add to the bottom line of the business. It really proves your ROI when you get that right. Does that make sense? Excellent. Good. Shall we come on to you guys?
Why not?
Excellent. So, Pinsent Mason, as I said earlier, is up for this award. I know in the summer of 2017, Christian, you were appointed as the new CISO, so that's Chief Information Security Officer, to lead a new international cyber and information security strategy fit for a digital legal world.
Yeah, sounds grand, doesn't it?
It sounds really, I was just
I'm
like,
kind of the
whoa.
guy in the dock if we get hacked and it all goes wrong, basically. Yeah, the firm had kind of realised that they needed to do more in that area and sort of see what was coming down the line in terms of the changing business world. We've heard today from a number of speakers talking about the digital change and adoption, and law firms are no different. And we've had some hard stuff to do. We've done some fun stuff, and for us, the change piece has not been stopping what we're doing and then doing something differently, but our change has involved kind of a completely new team.
18 people.
Yeah.
I mean, employing 18 people in the first place is difficult, but actually getting them all to work together with common values and establishing what that looks like within the rest of the business.
Sounds so easy when you say it like that.
It's really not.
I've often used the phrase of it's kind of like making an omelette. You've got to break a few eggs, and the view has been that some of those hires haven't worked out. Just kind of playing the law of averages, and some of them have. And in such a short space of time, we've grown the team. So for me, the change piece is around them coming together, but also us kind of finding our position within the broader firm. We're almost kind of created this tech startup within a very well-established 3,500 kind of people size international business, and we've got a new function that has this mandate to get stuff done.
Yeah, you wanted a particular culture, didn't you, for those people?
Massively. I mean, for me, and look, I first want to say information security is the most boring, dullest thing going. It's compliance, unless you're in the field, right? Which it's the best thing since sliced bread. And for me, the power and unity and our success is going to be drawn from the team. An overused saying I have is that it's a team sport. We can't do it on our own, both as a function, but also with the rest of the practice. So for me, culture was at the heart of it. And one of the things why I think the firm's been recognised for that and other awards is it's actually, dare I say it, a great place to be.
It really is, and I know you do an enormous amount for your assistants, so thank you for that. Karen, it must have been really difficult for you, really challenging to be in the middle of all that and putting it together. What new skills did you find yourself having to take on?
It was, when I joined, Christian had already been at the firm for just over a year, and some of the team were already on board as well. And to start with, when our new team were getting built, there wasn't sort of any plans for a PA to be in the team. And obviously the heads that report into Christian, they had never had any sort of PA support before. So they were all pretty used to doing everything themselves. So to start with, trying to get sort of workload from them was a bit tricky. So I was just keep persisting with them and advising that I'm here to help and to sort of make use of their time a bit more, and for me to be able to do jobs that they don't really have to do. And obviously sort of building within the team all over sort of the UK. We've got offices that all our teams are sort of spread out across. And also we've also got probably about 15 of us within sort of business operations, like a PA sort of forum as well. And a lot of them have been with the company sort of 20 plus years. So sort of trying to integrate that into their team with sort of people with massive knowledge of the company as well. I mean, I've been sort of doing PA, EA roles for sort of 13 years, but this one's sort of quite different because I've got the team coordinating side of things as well. And obviously now working a lot with the heads in their sort of particular roles as well is very interesting.
Yep. But with techies particularly, I think understanding how to use an assistant is relatively difficult.
Yeah, very.
Yeah, and coming in new is hard.
Yeah.
But I think, again, quite often we have to understand that it's our responsibility to train our executives how to use us best, because we are the experts at being the assistants, they're not. So actually, if the business is employing you to make them the best they can possibly be, you need to train them how to use you. There's a great story, actually, I'm sorry, I'm just going to go slightly off track, but there's a great story that illustrates that. There's a guy called Jeff Hoffman who is worth 58 billion. He started Priceline.com and Booking.com, and he speaks on the circuit for assistants a lot. But he tells a story about how he went to go and see a friend of his who was an eminent heart surgeon, and his friend was sitting there doing his diary. And he said to him, "What are you doing, Carl?" And Carl said, "Well, I'm doing my calendar. I'm doing my diary." And he said, "But aren't you worth $500 an hour?" Now, Carl says if you don't have an assistant, you are an assistant. If you don't have an assistant, you are an assistant. So, in effect, Carl was paying his assistant $500 an hour to do his calendar. So, what are the things that your executives are doing for themselves that actually you should be doing because the business is paying them their salary to do this stuff? And sometimes when we're talking to our executives, I think we need to learn the business language to do that. And sometimes it's in terms of putting it financially, just like that, so that you're able to take those tasks from them. Yes? Makes sense. Good.
Can I just add to that, though? Because I think from an executive point of view, it can be sometimes quite hard to do that, because some of those tasks are quite instant or quick and aren't necessarily thinking, okay, making the best use of my time, saving the firm money, and therefore Karen or kind of whoever else can pick it up. But actually, some of the things, one of the things I had to learn was actually like diary management, setting up a calendar, inviting people out. I can do it. And then I feel a bit weird asking somebody else to do it because it's such an easy thing and it's such a quick thing. So for me, it's been really difficult to say, okay, the business case is there for Karen to do more for me, but then actually I'm okay on a keyboard. I'm not so good on a typewriter, but I kind of think, well, it's going to take me 2 seconds. I'll be fine to do it. And I feel almost a bit embarrassed to say, hey, can you do this for me? Knowing it's quite an easy, simple thing to do.
Absolutely, but can I tell you where you're going to win if you hand it to her? Because for me, anybody that writes to me and says, can we have a meeting? I say yes, because that's my brand. Yes, because I have to. But when I write to them, I say, I'm not being grand, but I'm copying in my assistant Matthew, and he will put you into my calendar, because if I do it myself, he will kill me, because he needs to, because he has everything in there. But underneath the signature, somewhere where nobody ever looks, is a number between 1 and 5. And if it's a 1, they will get a meeting with me immediately. If it's a 5, it will be a cold day in hell before they get a meeting with me.
You're going to have to change that code now, because everyone's clearly aware of it. I totally get that. But I'm massively kind of bought into that. But I think just as an individual, maybe I don't know if I'm alone in this, but it's just it's hard taking that step, because I've grown up with computers and technology. It's just a natural thing that I can do.
And we're lawyers, so we're control freaks.
Well, exactly.
It's very, very true, and I totally get that, and I struggle with that on a daily basis with Angela. But I kind of said to her very early on that you need to be really disciplined and train us. You have to have the authority to do that. So I try in every single communication I have with Angela, with the team, to treat Angela very much as a senior employee in the team, because that way then that sets the example, not just to myself, but to everyone else in the team, that she is really senior in this team, and we have to work on that basis. It's very difficult, though, I agree. It's so easy just to click yes or click accept rather than just send it on, but we have to be disciplined, and she just shouts at me if I don't.
Absolutely, totally. The other thing with Pinsent Mason and this new team is that you're managing people right the way across the world, right? It's international. So how are you managing the processes around that?
Early mornings, late nights, lots of coffee. Next. So our central team's UK based, but they've got kind of global cover. So managing their welfare, I guess, in one regard, and their objectives, ensuring that they're kind of flexible enough in their working time that they can support an office or team members 8 to 12 hours ahead or behind, depending on where they are. And ensuring that we've got kind of regular communication and good communication. Just because you've got regular communication doesn't always then kind of mean it's purposeful or it's kind of meaningful. Messages get lost. Culture's a big thing for us as well. How we approach things, or how the individuals from the team here in the UK apply themselves when talking to teams in Beijing, in China, or the Middle East. That there's a lot of different nuances and kind of appreciations that need to be made. It's not just as we're sat here talking about everything else. I could say something and expect an outcome of one, but actually somebody else the other side of the world, because of their kind of their cultural difference, might mean something completely different. And when we're talking about security and protecting the firm and quite critical stuff, it's important that that message is very clear.
Yep. Wonderful, thank you. A question generally to you all then. I mean, it's very clear from the answers you've given on the panel that, you know, the assistant has been absolutely integral to the success of your change projects. How important do you think it is that they're seen as part of the business as opposed to support?
I think it's absolutely obvious and clear. I don't think there can be any other way of actually working. I've always struggled with this concept of sort of them and us. I just fundamentally don't think it makes for an efficient and effective team. And we all have one simple goal, which is, and it doesn't matter what your business is, as lawyers or whether you're managing pubs or running pubs, or you're in construction, we all want the same thing. We all want to do the best job we can. We all want to feel fulfilled. We all want to... That runs across everyone. It doesn't matter where you are in the organisation. So the more you work collaboratively, the more that you treat everyone as an equal in terms of voice, the more you're going to actually get result, in my view. And I don't think that's rocket science. I think it's quite simple.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a mindset. I share a lot of the sentiment there that probably 2.5 years ago, as a law firm with lawyers and support on the other side, was very much kind of balanced in favour of the lawyers, of the, look, we either own part of the firm and therefore we're going to do what we want to do. And previously the kind of support teams were seen very much as that second-class citizen, not by all, but there's still the one or twos that go, well, I pay your wages, so therefore you should just do this. Our COO, new to the organisation, one of the first things they did was kind of rebrand the support department to business operations, and look to kind of make clear that we enable the lawyers to do what they need to do in an efficient manner and kind of keep the clients happy, and in turn they bring the revenue into the business that allows us to innovate and install and maintain the systems of which we operate. I don't think we've solved it at all. We still have the kind of the views float around the business from time to time that you hear that we're the fee burners versus the fee earners, or that kind of, yes, we pay your wages, so why should we be doing this sort of stuff? But actually the tone from the top for us has changed to a point that really is dying out. We haven't got rid of it, but we're certainly changing.
I just have one thing. I know
Yes, of course.
Sorry, jumping there. We talked about sort of working as one team and what the financials are back to the business in terms of, you know, the support side taking on roles. But the key thing that we haven't mentioned, you know, when you work together, it makes it such more of an enjoyable environment. You know, you've got to work for the next 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, whatever years. So we talk about, you know, working collectively and, you know, the bottom line in terms of profit. But you enjoy what you do when you work as a collective and work together. I think that's a point not to be missed.
This has been absolutely fascinating. Guys, thank you all so much for giving up your morning to come and share with us. I hope you agree that it's been wonderful. Thank you all very much indeed.